be Maliki, except that unfortunately there are people that have basically moved on to some other ideologies recently in places like Algeria and others, right? Then you've got the Shafi'is, and then you've got the Hanbalis. The Hanbalis are a very small group today, right? The Hanbalis are a very small group today. The focus of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and his proficiency was more in hadith, according to many of the scholars. And that's what he wrote more on in terms of fiqh. That's why they say that his madhab as such wasn't as strong in terms of its endurance. A great madhab. I mean, Imam Ahmad, you can't, you just can't put anybody, equal with him in terms of his proficiency and his zuhud and everything. I mean, he's an imam. I mean, if you can have a few imams among our history, he's one of the imams, not just in fiqh, but in hadith and in everything else. But when we're looking at it purely from a juridical point of view, then that's what we get. Eventually, it just became normal and the practice that everybody who learnt fiqh, learnt it under one of the schools, right? Until about 200 years ago, about 150 years ago. When when it slowly began that we don't need the four madhabs. I don't entertain conspiracy theories. I'm not saying it's a British thing, as some people like to say, right? Wallahu a'lam what the reason was for that. But the fact is there, that it's only about 150 to 200 years old. Because, I'll tell you something, let's take a survey, right? This is something I want you to do. Just give me the names of 5 scholars, quickly, right? Volunteer some names of prominent scholars who most of us will know about. We've heard their name, right? That are beyond 200 years. Throw me some names. Sorry? Ibn Taymiyyah. Okay, alhamdulillah. That's one. Another one? Imam Suyuti. Right? So I'll write him down. Ibn Taymiyyah, Suyuti. Who else? Ghazali. Okay, carry on. Bin Baz is recent. Rahimahullah. Sorry? See, that's the problem. Some people they don't even know beyond 200 years. No offense to whoever said it, but I'm saying over 200 years. Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd and Ibn Hajar. You want one more for Barakah? Ibn Hajar, who? Imam Nawawi, you can't miss him, right? MashaAllah, we've got a lot of Shafi'is here. Anyway, let's look at these, right? Ibn Taymiyyah, the first one, Rahimahullah, Shaykh al-Islam. He was a Hanbali. Right? He never said don't become a Hanbali. He was a Hanbali. In fact, my current professor, Abdul Hakim al-Matrudi, he speaks about the influence of Ibn Taymiyyah and the Hanbali school. His entire thesis was on that subject, of whether, what affected what. His whole discussion is about that. Yes, there's no doubt that many of these scholars that you've mentioned had opinions that went against their madhab, because they had the level of ijtihad. They had the level of this proficiency in qualification to infer their own rulings. And they did go against in some issues from their madhab. But they were still, you could call them either affiliated mujtahids, right? Or mujtahids within the madhab. But they were primarily Hanbali. In fact, if you look at Ibn Taymiyyah, his father and grandfather were all great scholars of the Hanbali school. Right? And they've written text on that subject. So Ibn Taymiyyah was a Hanbali, there's no doubt about that. Yes, he had divergent opinions and he had tafarrudat, and he has the absolute right for that. Just like Tahawi has for the Hanafi school as well. But as a Hanafi, I can't follow Tahawi's opinion, because he doesn't represent the school in his isolated opinion, in his personal opinion. I have to follow the school, right? And number one, Suyuti. Suyuti is no doubt he's a Shafi'i scholar, right? Well within the Shafi'i school. Ghazali, primarily Shafi'i. Although he did have opinions. If you look at his Bidayatul Hidayah, if you look at his Ihya, if you look at some of the other books of fiqh, he is kind of ambiguous in some of his fiqh in terms of the ruling. For example, I mean, he's with the Hanafis when it comes to raising the hands up to the ears, right? But in some of his books, he mentions up to the shoulders. Right? But he was a Shafi'i, there's no doubt, because he wrote in the Usool of the Shafi'i school. So he was a legalist of the Shafi'i school as well, Usuli. Ibn Rushd was a Maliki for the most part. Though, he was a philosopher when it came to, he was a very Aristotelian ideology, a refiner of the Aristotelian ideology. But he was definitely a Maliki. Okay. And then Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, you can't get a bigger Shafi'i than him. Right? Alhamdulillah. And Nawawi, again, another massive Shafi'i scholar. Right, of colossal terms, absolutely, right, all of these. So you'd be hard pressed to find a single scholar from before 200 years ago that didn't affiliate themselves to the madhab unless they were a Zahiri. Unless they were Zahiri, Yeah. Imam Shawkani is recent. He's from Yemen. Imam Shawkani is recent. Imam Shawkani started off with something maybe from the Zaydi background, right, which is Zaydi Hanafi maybe, I'm not really sure. And then after that I think he was a mujtahid on his own, in his own right or something, I'm not sure, right? But he's recent. So you can't permit, you can't, there was something accepted upon. In fact, you had one of the Hanbali scholars, I think it's either Ibn Qudam, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, one of the two. They wrote, الرد على من لم يتبع المذاهب الأربعة. That a repudiation of those who don't follow one of the four madhabs. Right? I'm going to have to stop here because it is salat time. There's a lot more to be said, but hopefully you've got an understanding of how these things developed. And finally, for a mujtahid, it's not in, I just want to say this one last point because I find that it's so important. If today, if somebody has the entire corpus of ahadith, which were maybe not even available to all the imams, for example, right? He's got all the hadith, he's got a best database, he's got a very, very good computer system, and all the rest of it, right? And he's got the ability to, to correlate and to, show the correspondence and everything. Do you think that he can provide a good madhab? If he was given all the resource and everything? The reason he won't be able to is because there's no living tradition today that will show you how these rules were manifested and were practiced. What the four imams had is they still had communities around the world, wherever they were, they still had Sahaba, Tabi'een and others who still showed what it was like to be in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Today you can't point out one single area where it's exactly like that, where you can be reading your hadith and look there and think, oh, and now I understand what that is. I'm telling you, when we're studying even lugha, when we're studying lexicography, when we're studying even fiqh and hadith, you don't understand what you're reading until you actually go somewhere in the world and you actually see, oh, now I understand what that was talking about. It is not a simple endeavor, I'm telling you. That's why madhab, for a mujtahid mutlaq, an independent mujtahid to come about the likes of that, though someone might be intelligent enough, there's just not maybe enough other things. And there's no, obviously the tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's a whole different thing. It's not enough for us to get that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. The reason I just wanted to continue this for a few more moments. If we can get the sisters to also settle down, inshallah, just for the next 10-15 minutes. Jazakallah khairan. I think that it was actually very important for us to come back and for me to actually round this off, finish it up, because what we covered so far was purely from a very historical level, and I think we need to really tie in and understand the whole concept of unity of the ummah with it, and I think that's extremely important. There are also some very frequently asked questions with regards to this issue, common misconceptions, common confusions and misunderstandings, which I'm sure will come up in the question and answers, and I want to preempt them by trying to cover some of them right now. Right? These are certain questions that bother many of us and will basically taint our perspective as such and our understanding of what has been said so far. So I think they need to be clarified. I just want to mention one or two things. Why did, for example, the Hanafi school proliferate so greatly? 50% of the ummah maybe, right? I mean, these are, this is not any kind of personal statistics that I've conducted, but this is according to what some of the ulama have mentioned, just a basic survey of the Muslim lands. One of the reasons just could be that people like Imam Abu Yusuf, right, was made the Qadi al-Qudat, the supreme judge, the judge of all judges under Harun al-Rashid, one of the greatest caliphs of the Abbasid Caliphate, right? And obviously that must have had some influence because he wrote his Kitab al-Kharaj and some other books for Harun al-Rashid. Then you had, for example, the Uthmanis, the Uthmani Turks, it was probably one of the longest ruling dynasties ever to have lived and ever to have come and gone, about 600 or 700 years, and they were primarily Hanafi as well. Not that they ever enforced it. It wasn't like that's the only thing that could function under their rule, but obviously when you've got something, when